Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of these little guys right here. This is the Summit Knife Half Dome in the Micarta $170 version and the Full Titanium $230 version. First off though, full disclosure, these guys were provided to me directly by Summit Knives. They reached out to me, I said I'm talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly, might be a gem, might be junk. They still sent them along. And I told them we have to assume this is the best quality controlled set of these guys ever, and we also have to assume that I've done my best not to let that affect my review. However, the way this actually went down is they sent me this guy. I carried it, I filmed my review, and then I actually went to Blade Show, and I ended up talking with them and handling the Micarta one at their table, and realizing that it was in fact a very different world. The Micarta one is a very different knife, so I asked them to send me one of those guys as well, and now I'm refilming the video to combine both. The review of this guy is not substantially different, it's just now intermingled with the review of the Micarta one. So, there you go. Next thing, let's do some size comparison. First, here it is against a ruler. So we can see this guy comes in under 2.5 inches, uncontroversially, which is going to make it legal in a lot of places, at least here in the States. Next thing, size comparison, and I'll just use one of these guys for size comparison. Here it is against the Spyderco Delica. See, in terms of sharpened length, they're very similar, but in terms of handle length, very different. This guy is relatively compact. Here it is against your Ontario Rat number 2. Again, sharpened length is not so dissimilar, although here it is against the Spyderco PM2. So yeah, not a very big knife here. And then finally against two other meaningful comparisons. This is the Spyderco Native 5, and you can see in terms of sharpened length, they are almost identical. Although again, this guy is relatively compact versus that. And then here it is against the Spyderco Dragonfly, which is actually a knife that is remarkably similar in overall outline in the pocket to this guy, but ends up packing a much smaller blade into that frame. So yeah, this is a very compact knife. That's something to keep in mind here. Then next thing, who the heck is Summit Knife Company? Well, they are a small company. They are just sort of getting started. This is their very first model, but I kind of like the cut of their jib, specifically in terms of the marketing. But they are right now, the factory they are using for these initial models is Fox Knives over in Maniago, Italy. And yeah, they're reasonably solid folks. And by the way, the designer of this particular knife is Tommaso Rumici. Sorry, Tommaso, I'm sure I just butchered your name, but there you go. So anyways, that is, and I'll finally, as I'm going through the good, the great, the bad, the ugly, I'm actually going to discuss both knives. In many places, the same critiques apply to both, but in other places, they diverge, and I'll mention that explicitly. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of these very interesting little knives right here. First off, on the good side, honestly, I really appreciate the marketing of this. That's a silly thing to say. That doesn't really bear on the knife, but it really bears on the community. They are marketing these guys as outdoor tools. I mean, they're naming them after, Half Dome, in Yosemite National Park. It's a famous mountain. They've even put the elevation right next to it. That is something that is going to go over a lot better with a large part of the audience that is maybe not historically as aware and interested in the pocket knife game than the tactical weapon of war kind of mentality that has so dominated the freaking industry for years now. I don't see that as a look that's going to age super well, and I think this is a really good place for them to go. Because, it's silly to talk about marketing, but at another level, it makes a difference, right? If somebody who never thought they would carry a pocket knife and needed a pocket knife, they might be turned off by death on contact, or some of these other freaking hyper-masculine names. This is the way to turn the tide of perception for the knife community. Good, regular people just walking down the street realize they need a sharp tool to cut things. They find something that fits a little bit better with their preconceptions of themselves, and that might lead them down the road to say, wait a second, some of these other knives are really great too, douchey names aside. But this is how we move forward as a community, by, embracing new markets rather than just doubling down on first responder, as so many people in the industry are. So anyways, that's a complete rant. It doesn't have anything to do with the knives, but I really do appreciate that they're taking that approach. They're not the first people to do that. For instance, James Brand has done some stuff like that, and Benchmade works with Shinola, but still, it's good to see. I think that's a good way forward for the industry. Anyways, I digress. On the actual damn knife itself, it has an unconventional design. This kind of breaks some of the conventional rules, namely that there is no tip on this guy. It is a very small design, which is both good for carry as well as good for people. Some of the same people who might be terrified of weapon of war marketing are going to see this as like, oh, that's kind of cute. That's a nice little tool, right? this doesn't come across as, oh my God, stabby, jumping. People aren't going to be jumping onto tables in the lunchroom if you pull this out to open your freaking rice. I mean, this is an important thing for some people in some worlds. It is people friendly, and frankly, it's off the beaten path, right? You look at the pocket knife community, and there were a whole bunch of things that look nothing at all like this, and there's really only this that looks a lot like this. And so I do very much appreciate the unconventional design here. Next thing, they both have very nice blades. They are M390 steel, which is one of the best steels chemically out there. We know there's more to steel, of course, than chemistry, but that's a good place to start, certainly. And they are ground relatively thin, at least for Italy. They have a relatively thin grind on this guy. With this unconventional shape, you know what? The blade works fine. It cuts, that's good. On the full titanium, the very best part of this guy is the finishing. You've got a nice stone wash going on here on the titanium, which is nice. You have good blade finishing overall, although it's worth noting that the blades are identical between these two guys. You've got this little bit of a you've got both a contour, the different coloration that is on the clip, as well as the hardware, as well as the standoffs there. I mean, overall, it's got some very nice finishing, and it is an attractive piece, certainly. The Micarta, though, has even more great things going for it. They didn't, well, one thing that's kind of important to note is that they didn't screw it up in other ways purposefully. Very often, companies will do like market segmentation BS, where they will, oh, well, the Micarta version gets a lesser steel. We'll make this one out of 440 or something like that. No, they use the exact same blade. They just made this a question of which one you prefer. They didn't make the cheaper one worse just to make the more expensive one look better. I love that they didn't do that. That's a silly thing to say. That's like saying, wow, I love that guy didn't, flip me off right there. But it is so common in the knife world that it's good to see that otherwise. But I also like a bunch of other elements of it. The clip on it is very nice. It is a very deep carry clip. It has lots of ramp. It just works very, very well. I like that. And it's also, by the way, an ambidextrous clip, so you can flip this over and mount it on the other side, unlike this guy, which can only be mounted in that position with a relatively shallow carry on it. So they do keep that in mind. It is also relatively lightweight. If we put this guy down on the scale here, we are coming in on the Micarta version here at 2.46 ounces, which is less than an ounce an inch. Versus this guy is coming in at 3.09 ounces. It's not a huge difference, but it definitely does make it makes a difference. This guy carries a little bit better than this guy does. One thing to note is that this actually has, as you can see inside there, a metal insert that the washer rides on, which is connected to the stop pin, which means that this Micarta here isn't the only thing holding the knife together. And, with the standoffs and whatnot, it is plenty beefy. There's no real problem with it there. But this ends up being a very carryable and, frankly, very attractive piece. I've actually oiled the Micarta a little bit just because I like the look of that, and because I think it just makes it a little bit, I don't know, for me at least that's what I like. But nevertheless, it's a very attractive piece, and in some ways it's a little less conventional, a little bit more off the beaten path, and to top all that off, it's actually cheaper. The price on this guy, on the Micarta one that is actually pretty reasonable. It's $175, but you're getting M390 with a nice titanium frame lock, some Micarta here, and I think the price on this guy is absolutely fine. It's good to go. There's not a big problem with the price. So, to me at least, that's what's good, is that in the Micarta version, you're getting a decent price, attractiveness, it's carryable, really, really carryable, well constructed in terms of having that metal insert there. We'll talk about other construction issues later on. It's lightweight, and they didn't screw up the steel. The full titanium's got that nice blue-gray thing going on for it, and then both of them have a nice blade, an unconventional design, and I do really appreciate the outdoor tool marketing rather than more shouting high-speed, low-drag self-defense weapon over and over again, as much of the industry has continued to do. On the great side to me, actually, believe it or not, are the ergonomics. These knives feel very nice in the hand for me. I have smaller hands than most, so maybe this is a hand size difference. But these work really well because you've got your index finger lands here, your thumb lands here. Both of these have some good texturing, so it's not going anywhere in your hand. These fingers slide into this groove, and then this little design in the back here is very, very nice. This is ergonomically beautifully done. Ergonomically speaking, I will say the flush clip on the titanium version is a little nicer just because it's less prominent, but even still, although you get a hot spot right here, as you do anytime you have a wire clip, it is very much a nice thing ergonomically. This works pretty well in the hand. Both are pretty solid, ergonomically speaking, and it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Just looking at them like, not so much, but actually actually they are. They're good to go. So to me, that's great. Is the ergonomics are actually surprisingly good, given it doesn't look like it should be. On the bad side, to start off with, this is a flick-only knife. Both of these guys, the really only way to open this is by flicking it open using your index finger. This takes, or of course, two-hand open, that works too, no problem. But nevertheless, for some people, that's not going to be particularly ideal, and that means they very badly need to make sure this hole is well chamfered. Because it is just not comfortable, given the sharpness of this hole, to do a conventional thumb open like that. And frankly, it's not super well positioned for that. You could, I suppose, maybe, do one of those things, but the detent is enough there that it's, Anyway, so there you go. It's gonna be bad for some people that it is a flick-only knife if they're not a big fan of the flick. Next thing, they definitely screwed up the sharpening choil on both of these. You can see there is a strong ramp here at the bottom of the blade. That just is evidence that this sharpening choil needed to go out about a millimeter further. And, whatever, they can fix that in the next run, not a big deal. Unfortunately, on both of these knives, the construction honestly doesn't impress me much. For instance, on this little guy right here, you have actually two different washes in here. You've got two different brass washers. It's not great. Watch my disassembly video on this guy. That'll kind of show you what's going on there. The detent on both of these isn't amazing for flicking, because it's very easy to miss a flick on here. On both of them, it's just not very strong. That's not great. The lock face on both of them looks very dirty. Let's see if I can show off there. Yeah, that's not looking so good. And you've got a very, very early lockup on the titanium one. And actually, the lockup is very variable on these guys. On the titanium one, it is creepy early. You can see right there. And on the micarta one, it's closer to 30, 40%. That's a lot of variability, and that scares me just a little bit. And then on both of them, the action isn't amazing. They're okay, and they're getting a little better as I wear them in, but not so stellar. Not a big fan of the action on either of these guys. Honestly, the construction on these is the worst part, just generally speaking. That's not super great. Next thing, why the heck do these knives have a lanyard hole? Like, seriously, why put a hole in this damn thing? Because look, work with me here. Here is the tip of the knife. Here is the belly of the knife. There is a whole bunch of space between the blade and that, and there is right back here a big old freaking standoff. There is no reason you couldn't loop a lanyard around that standoff and work just as well as having one through the freaking lanyard hole in the back. I just think this knife would be much better without an unnecessary lanyard hole hanging out in the back there. There is a place for the lanyard folks to put their lanyard, but the rest of us don't need that freaking hole. Whatever, not a big deal. The canvas one on this guy actually does have two unique issues. For instance, it has a little bit of a hot spot right here on the back of the clip. This is a common thing. It's in fact common with any of the wire clips that you see pretty much anywhere, but that's definitely something to keep in mind. And also, because this guy has a much deeper lockup, another design flaw emerges, which is that there is no difference in height between this scale and this one. So really, unlocking it is much less pleasant. It's sort of a jam your thumb in there and try and vector the force enough to the side that it works. They really need to just knock down this side a little bit more here. Lower this a little tiny bit. That would make it much easier to disengage and frankly make it just a more pleasant knife to use. And considering I never noticed this on the titanium one because the lockup is freaky early, yowzers, still. So it needs a little bit more cutout on the show side here to make that better. But those are the issues for the canvas. On the titanium one, unfortunately, there's no internal milling. Really, it feels a little low effort on the titanium front here. And the biggest issue that this guy has is the price. It's $230, and the thing is, it doesn't stand up super well to the competition at that price point. $50 makes a big difference, because now you look competing against things from like We Knives, Spyderco, etc., that are just better done, that are made in, well, I won't necessarily say better factories, but they're made by the factory with better care. And I just feel like this is it doesn't stand up well to the competition at this price point. At $175, yeah, this works. This guy, not so competitive. So to me, that's what's bad here, is the titanium is just not competitive in cost and has no internal milling or anything like that to lighten it up. The canvas has the unique issues of the hot spot in the back here, and both of them need a little bit of a cutout here. These knives should not have a lanyard hole. They've already got a place for it. We're good. The construction, honestly, is just not very good on either of them. It was just let down by the factory. They screwed up the sharpening choil, and these are flick-only knives, if that's important to you. on the ugly front. Unfortunately, both of these guys have sharp edges everywhere. This is a super common thing coming out of Italy. I just don't know why, but every Italian factory seems to do it, and it always angers me. All of the edges that are not edge are not supposed to be super sharp, but you get sharpness right here. You get sharpness back here. You get sharpness here. The inside of these holes is very, very sharp, to the extent where I actually had to knock them down with a set of rounded, ceramic files here. These are from Spyderco. But nevertheless, I had to knock these down with a set of files in there just to be able to carry this guy comfortably. It's just not good. I shouldn't have to do that, guys. That is the job of the factory, to knock these things down. The jimping, the frame lock hole, all of this stuff is just sharper than it needs to be. I don't care whether they're tumbling the parts, or they just need to do something to make that a little bit better. Then finally, on the ugly front, the clip on the titanium one is just bad. It is super shallow. It is a clip with a very low, it's a very low clip with very low ramp. It just doesn't work well. You can get it in the pocket, I guess, but it's just not a pleasure to use. And considering they have such a good clip on the Micarta version, one hot spot aside, it just bothers me. This knife would be better with this clip. I'm sorry, it's just true. This clip never works well. I've seen similar clips out of Fox for other makers, and just, no, stop. No. So, to me, at least, that's what's ugly here, is the titanium clip is just bad, and both of them have sharp edges just everywhere that the factory really should know better than to let out of the factory. On the final conclusion front, look, I like the design here very much. It's a bit off the beaten path. It's nice in the hand. It's unique in the profile. Works well as a daily tool. And you know what? The Micarta one even feels a lot like a value. I think this is a solid knife that's easy to recommend. I also like the vibe of the company. We need new ideas, new approaches, new fields being opened up. I could definitely do with more knives being named after mountains, less after armies. And talking to the maker, honestly, I love his approach. He is directly targeting the people who wouldn't carry a 0 tolerance 0562 CF. I like this, the cut of the jib here. I said that again, and I'll say it again. I can see this guy jumping out at somebody who might never have considered buying a pocket knife before if he markets these correctly to the right audiences. He could do really well with this in like a climbing magazine or something like that, where I think a lot of stuff might not go quite so well for him. But, I like them bringing new people in the fold. Let people find the passion for pocket knives, as I did. But there are some design issues here. Putting aside all the marketing stuff, there were design issues. The titanium one needs a better clip, flat out. They need better lock bar access on both of them. But biggest of all, the factory did not do them any favors here. Although the blade grinding was a lot better than what you see out of a lot of Maniago, the action isn't great, the detent isn't great, the lockup is super variable, the sharpening choil is way off. They skipped past the part where they made sure the only sharp edge was on the blade. That's important. So they're going to need to ride their factory much, much harder on these issues, or choose a factory which will do better work for them. Either way, maybe the full TI will be worth it once they fix those kinds of things, but that's a bit of a problem. The fabrication is their biggest liability here. For me, personally, I can't recommend the titanium version. I've been doing the direct comparison. I just can't. Because the Spyderco Techno 2 is this knife's strongest competitor, and it's $15 cheaper. It's finished twice as nicely, with a clip that is twice as good. I am just not paying $230 for B- construction. If their factory does better work for them next time, or they choose a better factory, then maybe the full titanium would be worth it. If this were made really, really well, then sure, I can maybe see that. But as it stands right now, no, I'm not seeing that price, and I can't really recommend this guy. But the Micarta one is very much a different story here. The knife in Micarta is lighter. It's more attractive with a better clip, and the blade, the most important part, is exactly the same as the higher end one, and the price is $50 less. This, on the other hand, is a knife in Micarta that I could very easily recommend to people. It lets the strength of the design shine through. And at that level, for a lot of folks, this is going to be something they will very, very much enjoy. So the Micarta Half Dome, although I can't recommend the titanium one, the Micarta Half Dome is a very nice little design from a very interesting new company, which offers a fair bit of performance in a smaller package that's off the beaten path with a great overall ethos. And this is a knife that Iosa might recommend to anybody looking for a neat little knife. Yeah, I know it's Yosemite, but come on, work with me here. And I will be definitely making sure to take a peek at new knives from Summit coming down the trail. So anyways, there you go. Hope this was interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.